Commercial Vehicle Operators Safety Manual, Module 4, Commercial Vehicle Operators Registration. Overview, Commercial Vehicle Operators Registration, Learning Objectives, Introduction, CVOR Requirements, Exemptions, CVOR Written Test. When should the CVOR test be completed? Who is required to take the CVOR test? Time limits to complete. Where to go? What to bring? How to prepare? CVOR operator responsibilities. CVOR application. CVOR application requirements. Renewal of your CVOR certificate. How the CVOR system works. Jurisdictions outside Canada. Lease. Reporting CVOR changes or errors. Corporate officers, directors. Fleet size, kilometers traveled. Name, address. The operator's fleet size. Fleet/kilometric data. CVOR abstracts. Carrier, CVOR abstract, level 2. Collisions, convictions, inspections, facility audits. Ministry interventions and sanctions. Points, inspection out of service rates. Evaluating an operator's performance. Interventions and sanctions. Sanctions, violation rates. Carrier safety rating. Appendix A, CVOR formula. Appendix B, threshold values. Overview. The Commercial Safety and Compliance Branch of the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario has prepared this guide to assist and ensure that truck and bus companies, commercial vehicle operators, operate safely and are compliant with the regulations that govern highway use. Ontario, other provinces, the Government of Canada, and the transportation industry developed the rules and regulations to help reduce the number of severity and collisions. Each jurisdiction has used the National Safety Code standards as guides in drafting their own transportation safety legislation. This approach promotes uniformity across Canada and helps to ensure that the transportation industry remains as viable and sustainable as possible. This guide applies to Ontario operators of commercial motor vehicles that are trucks, tractors, mobile equipment vehicles or trailers, and/or any combination of these vehicles that have a registered gross weight or actual weight of more than 4,500 kilograms. Tow trucks, regardless of registered gross weight or actual weight. Buses with a manufactured seating capacity of 10 persons or more, excluding the driver. Accessible vehicles and school purpose vehicles, depending on use. This guide contains several modules, each dealing with a specific topic. To get a complete picture of compliance requirements, you should obtain the complete guide. If you intend to use certain parts of this guide only, for example, Module 1, Getting Started, it is recommended that you also obtain the modules Introduction and Commercial Vehicle Operators Registration. This is a guide only and is not meant to be a substitute for relevant statutes and regulations. This guide highlights some important legal provisions, but is not an exhaustive description of all the laws that apply. Commercial Vehicle Operators Registration, Learning Objectives. As you work through this module, you will be able to Identify which truck and bus companies are required to register for a commercial vehicle operator's registration, CVOR. Understand your responsibilities as a CVOR holder. Know how to apply for a CVOR and gather the required information. Know when you need to renew your CVOR. Know the fees associated with the CVOR program. Develop an understanding how the CVOR system works. Develop an understanding of the CVOR abstract. Know how intervention and sanctions are applied to a CVOR holder. Develop an understanding of the carrier safety rating system. Introduction. The Commercial Vehicle Operators Registration (CVOR) system and the Carrier Safety Rating (CSR) program were developed by the Ministry of Transportation as part of Ontario's ongoing commitment to road safety. These programs promote the safe operation of trucks and buses on Ontario's roadways. Each operator is responsible for monitoring its CVOR record and the performance information it provides, including violation rates, thresholds, audit scores, and resulting safety rating. The operator should identify and address problem areas in order to improve their commercial motor vehicle safety performance. The CVOR system is part of the Carrier Safety Rating Program. The Ministry of Transportation monitors operators and assigns each a safety rating based on several factors: collisions, inspections, and convictions, as well as the result of facility audits. The CVOR system tracks the on road safety performance of operators of the following vehicles: trucks that have a gross weight or registered gross weight over 4,500 kilograms, 9,920 pounds. Tow trucks, regardless of registered gross weight or actual weight. Buses that have a designed seating capacity of 10 or more passengers. The goal of the CVOR system is to improve road safety for all users of Ontario highways by having an effective monitoring and intervention system for operators. Poor performance may result in the loss of privileges to operate commercial motor vehicles. For more information on the Commercial Vehicle Operators Registration Program, contact Carrier Sanctions and Investigation, Ministry of Transportation, 301 St. Paul Street, 3rd floor, St. Catharines, Ontario. CVOR requirements. A CVOR certificate is required to operate commercial motor vehicles that are plated in Ontario, plated in the US, plated in Mexico. Vehicles that are plated in other Canadian provinces or territories, but not Ontario, do not need a CVOR certificate. They require a safety fitness certificate, NSC number, from the province or territory in which the vehicle is plated, excluding Quebec that require a Numero d'Identification au Registre, NIR. Note, for hire operators of buses, including motor coaches, school buses, and school purpose vehicles, or any other motor vehicle, including cars, vans, and limos, may also require an operator authority under the Ontario Public Vehicles Act and Motor Vehicle Transport Act, Canada. Contact the Ontario Highway Transport Board for more information. Ontario confirms the Commercial Vehicle Operators Registration (CVOR) status of owners of trucks and buses that are required to be operated under the authority of a valid CVOR. This will be completed at the time of registration or renewal of the license plate for their truck or bus. If a vehicle is not exempt from the requirement to hold a valid CVOR, Owners may not be able to attach a license plate or renew the license plate on the truck or bus. Exemptions. Operators with certain types of vehicles do not need a CVOR certificate. These vehicles include a truck or bus that is plated in another Canadian jurisdiction, a truck other than a tow truck with a registered gross weight RGW and a gross weight of 4,500 kilograms or less, whether towing a trailer or not. See determining RGW. A truck or bus leased by an individual for 30 days or less to move their personal goods or to carry passengers at no fare. An ambulance, fire apparatus, hearse, casket wagon. An unladen truck or bus operating under the authority of a dealer plate or service plate. A bus used for personal purposes without compensation. A motorhome used for personal purposes. A pickup truck used for personal purposes. For more information on personal use pickup truck exemptions, refer to www.mto.gov.on.ca. Note, for current exemptions, please refer to the Highway Traffic Act. CVOR written test. The Ministry of Transportation, MTO, requires all Ontario-based operators who apply for a commercial vehicle operator's registration CVOR certificate to complete a CVOR written test. Operators will be required to demonstrate knowledge of Ontario's safety laws by completing this test in person at a drive test center before MTO will issue a CVOR certificate. When should the CVOR test be completed? The CVOR test is to be completed after MTO has accepted your application for a CVOR certificate. Who is required to take the CVOR test? The CVOR test must be completed by an individual on behalf of an operator applying for the CVOR. That individual is not considered to have successfully completed the CVOR test on behalf of any other operator. This individual must be the owner, sole proprietor, corporate officer, or director of a corporation. Time limits to complete. The CVOR test may be attempted as many times as needed. However, the test must be successfully completed within 6 months of MTO accepting the application. Where to go? The CVOR test must be completed in person at a drive test center in Ontario. To find a drive test center location near you, visit the Drive Test website. What to bring? MTO will provide an applicant with an application confirmation letter once an application has been processed, outlining your requirement to complete the CVOR test, including how to locate a drive test center, who is required to complete the test, owner, sole proprietor, corporate officer, or director of a corporation listed on your application. What to bring? Copy of the application confirmation letter, photo identification, test fee of $32. Once the CVOR test is successfully completed, Drive Test will notify the MTO and the CVOR certificate may be issued. This requires 24 hours to process. How to prepare? The CVOR test is a multi-choice and based on the content of this manual, the Commercial Motor Vehicle Operator's Safety Manual. You can also prepare by completing the CVOR practice tests. New applicants are required to complete the CVOR application process, and once notified by MTO by receipt of an application confirmation letter, complete the test in person at a drive test location. You will be required to bring your application confirmation letter from MTO and photo identification with you to the drive test center location in order to complete your test. Note, Drive test staff will only administer the CVOR test to those identified on the application confirmation letter from MTO. This includes the owner, sole proprietor, corporate officer, or director of a corporation as per the information the applicant provided on their application form. Drive test staff will require photo identification and a copy of the MTO application confirmation letter to confirm the identity of the individual completing the test. If you require a corporate officer or director to be added to your file or require a second copy of the application confirmation letter provided by MTO, you must contact the Carrier Sanctions and Investigation Office. CVOR operator responsibilities. A CVOR operator is the person or legal entity responsible for the operation of a commercial motor vehicle. The operator is responsible for the conduct of the driver, the mechanical safety condition of the vehicle, the goods or passengers on the vehicle. The operator does not necessarily need to be the vehicle owner, but must be able to immediately produce a valid CVOR certificate for the legal entity when using vehicles that are leased or contracted. Operators are responsible for all the drivers and vehicles in their operation. For example, these responsibilities include employing qualified and licensed drivers, monitoring the safety performance of drivers, including hours of service, resolving driver safety issues when they are identified, keeping vehicles in good, safe condition at all times, ensuring load security, ensuring that daily and annual/semi-annual inspections are completed, keeping records on file, for example, vehicle repairs, kilometers traveled per year, annual inspection reports, and so on. Notifying the ministry of changes such as name, address, telephone numbers, fleet data, kilometric travel, changes in corporate officers, and so on. Among other provincial and federal legislative requirements, operators must comply with all regulations and legislation under the Highway Traffic Act in order to operate a business in Ontario. Failing to comply may result in sanctions or loss of operating privileges. CVOR application. To apply for a CVOR certificate, an operator must complete a commercial vehicle operator's registration certificate application and pay the required fee. Operators can print the application form and guidelines at this link. Operators can also obtain an application form by contacting Carrier Sanctions and Investigation Office. CVOR application requirements. The CVOR application requires information about the operator such as type of operation, corporate officers, directors, and partners, fleet size, kilometers traveled, authorized signature. Upon completing the application process, new applicants are required to complete a CVOR written test. New Ontario-based applicants must successfully pass the CVOR test prior to being issued a CVOR certificate and obtaining the ability to operate on Ontario roads. Additional documentation may be required for new applicants. For example, articles of incorporation, master business license, and so on. After the ministry receives and processes the completed application, the CVOR certificate will be mailed to the operator. Renewal of your CVOR certificate. CVOR certificates are assigned an expiry date. New applicants for CVOR certificates will be assigned an expiry date at time of issuance. Annual renewal will be required for all operators except those with carrier safety ratings of satisfactory or excellent. These operators will be required to renew their certificate only every 2 years. Operators will be sent a notice 60 days prior to expiry. An operator that does not renew prior to the expiry date is liable to a fine and possibly to imprisonment under Section 21 parentheses 2 of the Highway Traffic Act if one or more of its commercial motor vehicles is found operating on an Ontario highway. How the CVOR system works. The CVOR system monitors an operator's record over a 2-year period. This automated computer system contains information that includes operator information, convictions, reportable collisions, safety inspections conducted to CVSA criteria, ministry interventions, for example, letters, interviews, audits, and sanctions. The CVOR certificate identifies the operator and contains a unique 9-digit identification number. A copy of the certificate or original must be carried in each commercial motor vehicle operated under the CVOR certificate. Operators must surrender the certificate for inspection purposes when requested by an MTO enforcement officer or police officer. Jurisdictions outside Canada. Operators of commercial motor vehicles in Ontario that are plated in any jurisdiction outside Canada must apply for and obtain a CVOR certificate. Lease. Where a lease is involved, it must identify both the vehicle and lessee's CVOR number if the CVOR certificate is not carried in the vehicle. Documented proof of the lease must also be carried in the vehicle. Reporting CVOR changes or errors. Current CVOR registrants. Under the Highway Traffic Act, changes to corporate officers, directors, or partners, operator name or address must be reported to the ministry within 15 days. Changes to shareholders should not be reported. The HTA requires that changes to fleet size and kilometers traveled must also be reported to the deputy registrar. A change that increases or decreases an operator's fleet size by more than 20% must be reported within 15 days after the change. Updated operator information must also be reported to the deputy registrar upon receiving a request for this information. Failure to do so could result in charges being laid against the operator and is a condition of retaining a CVOR certificate. A new certificate will only be issued for changes to the operator name or if a replacement is required due to loss, damage, and so on. All name changes require proper and legal supporting documentation. Corporate officers/directors. If there is a change of corporate officers and/or directors, the operator must contact MTO Carrier Sanctions and Investigation Office to have a CVOR update application sent to them. Fleet size/kilometers traveled. If there is a change in fleet size or kilometers traveled, the operator must contact MTO Carrier Sanctions and Investigation Office to have a CVOR update application sent to them. Note, changes to fleet size and rate of travel are not automatically captured through the province's vehicle registration system. For example, license plate renewal, permit purchase, or deletion. Name, address. Name or address changes for an individual can be made at a driver and vehicle licensing issuing office through the vehicle registration system. Address changes for a corporation can be made at a driver and vehicle license issuing office. Name changes for a corporation must be made through the Licensing Administration and Support Office by mail at Building A, 87 Sir William Hurst Avenue, Toronto, Ontario. Note, a new CVOR certificate will be issued for name changes but not for address changes. The operator's fleet size. All commercial motor vehicles must be reported as part of an operator's fleet size, including all trucks, leased, rented, and owned, having a gross weight or registered gross weight of more than 4,500 kilograms, all tow trucks, and all buses. A bus is a motor vehicle designed to carry 10 or more passengers, not including the driver. Trailers and converter dollies are not counted as part of the fleet size. These include all commercial motor vehicles in an operator's fleet that are plated in Ontario, the US, or Mexico. These do not include any commercial motor vehicles in an operator's fleet that are plated in other Canadian jurisdictions. Any trailers and trailer converter dollies in an operator's fleet. Fleet/kilometric data. The Highway Traffic Act requires operators to report fleet size and travel information to the ministry within 15 days after a change in the fleet size of 20% greater or less than last reported, as well as upon request. If the fleet size or rate of travel fluctuates throughout the year, the average rate of travel in Canada for the fleet operating in or through Ontario should be reported. Operators must maintain records over a period of up to 24 months demonstrating the kilometers traveled by the trucks and buses in its fleet. Operators must report any significant changes in total kilometers driven in Ontario, total kilometers driven in all other Canadian jurisdictions, total kilometers driven outside of Canada. Note, for more information on determining fleet size and rate of travel, please contact MTO Carrier Sanctions and Investigation Office. CVOR Abstract. A CVOR abstract is a document that displays information about an operator and that operator's safety performance. There are 3 CVOR abstracts available. Public CVOR abstract level 1 is a one-page document available to the general public summarizing an operator's record over a 2-year period. Carrier CVOR abstract level 2 is available only to the operator or their authorized agent and includes summary data over a 2-year period, as well as detailed event data for collisions, convictions, and inspections for a 5-year period. CVOR driver abstract is a 5-year record of collisions associated with a conviction of the driver for a safety-related offense, convictions and inspections relating to the driver, while operating a commercial motor vehicle in Ontario only. The driver license status and medical due date are also shown. Carrier CVOR abstract level 2. Should that be level 3? Collisions, convictions, and inspections appear on the Carrier CVOR abstract level 2 in the following ways. Collisions. Reportable collisions that occur in Ontario are received by MTO from the police. Reportable collisions that occurred in other Canadian jurisdictions are reported by those jurisdictions via a Canada-wide data exchange system. Only those out-of-province collisions that occurred after April 1st, 2007 will appear on a carrier abstract. A reportable accident involves damage over $2,000 and or over $2,000 and or personal injury. Collisions are assigned points based on the severity of the collision and other information on the motor vehicle accident report. The report may also include written information on charges laid. Collisions where no improprieties or vehicle defects are noted on the police report appear on the operator's CVOR record but do not incur points. For example, 0 pointed. Collisions reported at a collision reporting center, self-reporting, are also included on the operator's record and may also be pointed. Convictions. An officer may lay a charge against a driver or operator. Convictions resulting from driver or operator charges are recorded on the operator's CVOR record with point values based on severity. Convictions for offenses that occurred in other Canadian jurisdictions are received by MTO via a Canada-wide data exchange system. These out-of-province convictions will appear on a carrier CVOR abstract level 2. Inspections. An officer may conduct an inspection of a commercial motor vehicle. Inspections are conducted according to the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, CVSA, standards, which are applied by all jurisdictions across North America. Inspections can result in the following findings: defects, out of service defects, critical defects that can cause the vehicle to be impounded. Driver or vehicle inspection categories that do not meet the minimum standard are considered out of service. When mechanical defects exceed the critical defect criteria, the ministry may impound the vehicle. In such a situation, extra points are not added on the CVOR record. However, this event does appear on the CVOR record and could result in the operator being recommended for an intervention. All levels of CVSA inspections performed by an officer anywhere in Canada will appear on a carrier abstract. This includes past inspections as well as those with defects and defects that are out of service. There are 5 levels of CVSA inspections that Ontario monitors on a CVOR abstract. Level 1, examination of the vehicle and driver, driver's license, daily inspections, vehicle maintenance, and hours of service. Level 2, walk around driver and vehicle inspection. Components including those that can be inspected without physically getting under the vehicle, as well as driver's license and hours of service. Level 3, only driver's license, vehicle permits, annual inspections, and hours of service. Level 4, special inspections directed to examine a particular driver-related item or vehicle component. Level 5, vehicle inspection only without the driver present. Facility audits. The results of a facility audit will be recorded on an operator's CVOR record. An audit conducted at the request of the operator will be noted on the record as a voluntary audit. Ministry interventions and sanctions. Ministry interventions and sanctions include disciplinary letters sent to the operator, interviews, audits, and sanctions of fleet limitation, seizure of plates, suspension and/or cancellation of the operator's operating privileges. Points. Collisions are pointed based on severity, property damage, personal injury, or fatal injury, and impropriety, vehicle defect, driver action, driver condition, noted on the motor vehicle accident report from the police, or as indicated on a collision record reported by another Canadian jurisdiction. Collisions with no impropriety or vehicle defects reported will appear on the operator's CVOR record but are not pointed. The following table determines point values assigned for collisions that occurred after April 1st, 2007. Collision weighting table. Severity, no impropriety factor equals 0, impropriety factor equals 2. Property damage, personal injury factor 2, fatal injury factor 3. Convictions are pointed as per conviction code table. Safety related convictions are assigned a weighted value. Administrative related convictions appear on the CVOR record but are weighted at 0. Contact MTO Carrier Sanctions and Investigation Office for a full copy of the conviction code table. Inspection points are assessed on out of service defects. 1 point is assigned for the first inspected category found with an out of service defect per unit, and 2 points for each subsequent category found out of service on the same unit. Each vehicle in a combination of vehicles is counted as a unit. The driver is also counted as a unit, but not any co-driver. There are 15 vehicle inspection categories and 2 driver inspection categories. Vehicle defects: brake system, frame, lighting system, driveline, drive shaft, tires, coupling devices, exhaust system, wheels, rims, load security, fuel system, body, emergency exits, wiring and temporary seating buses, steering system, windshield wipers, suspension system, dangerous goods. Driver's defects: driver's licenses, hours of service, inspection out of service rates. There are 3 out of service rates: overall, vehicle, and driver. The overall inspection out of service rate is the percentage of total inspections conducted in the displayed time period that had out of service defects. For example, if an operator had 6 inspections in 24 months and 3 inspections had out of service defects, then the overall out of service rate is 50%. The vehicle out of service rate is the percentage of total inspections, excluding level 3, that reported vehicle out of service defects, levels 1, 2, and 5. The driver out of service rate is the percentage of total inspections that reported a driver out of service defect, levels 1, 2, and 3. In all cases, level 4 CVSA inspections are not counted in determining out of service rates. The out of service rates are shown on the first page of the carrier CVOR abstract, level 2. Evaluating an operator's performance. The CVOR system evaluates an operator based on the events on its CVOR record, including collisions, driver and operator convictions, CVSA inspection, and the results of facility audits. Operators with vehicles plated in the US are evaluated on kilometers traveled in Ontario only and only for Ontario events. Interventions and sanctions. The CVOR system automatically identifies an operator for review when poor safety performance is identified based on the operator's overall violation rate. Predetermined stages have been established at which point operator interventions or sanctions will be considered. When one of these stages is reached, ministry staff will determine the appropriate intervention. The Deputy Registrar of Motor Vehicles may use other triggering methods to bring an operator to the ministry's attention, such as significant incidents, for example, impoundments or wheel separations, unpaid fines, or chronic noncompliance. All interventions and sanctions concerning a carrier's CVOR record are directed towards the corporate officer or senior official of the company. In this way, the individual who has control of and accountability for the carrier's operations will be aware of the ministry's concerns regarding its safety performance and is expected to take the necessary steps to improve. This approach has proven very successful in improving operator performance. More than 80% of operators that are subject to an intervention improve their record to an acceptable standard. Sanctions. A sanction is the most severe disciplinary measure that the deputy registrar may impose. It may result in a fleet limitation, plate seizure, or suspension or cancellation of an operator's operating privileges. Sanctions may also result in an operator receiving an unsatisfactory safety rating. Sanctions imposed by the deputy registrar take effect throughout Canada. As part of the sanction process, the operator will have an opportunity to show cause as to why the sanction should not be imposed. Operators that exceed 100% of their overall CVOR threshold may receive a notice of sanction. The operator's most senior official is given the opportunity to show cause to the Deputy Registrar of Motor Vehicles as to why its commercial vehicle operator privileges in Canada should not be revoked, suspended, or limited. Sanctions may be appealed to License Appeal Tribunal, 20 Dundas Street, 5th floor, Toronto, Ontario, within Ontario only. Violation rates. Violation rate is the percentage of points that an operator has accumulated against the set maximum thresholds. The threshold is the allowable rate expressed in a percentage that the operator may reach. An operator's threshold is the maximum violation rate deemed acceptable for that specific operator. The violation rate threshold is not the same for all operators. It is calculated based on the number of vehicles and drivers in the operator's fleet and the numbers of kilometers traveled. For example, an operator with more vehicles and traveling a further distance would have a higher threshold than a small operator. Violation rates are accumulated based on an operator's collision, convictions, and inspections over and up to a 24-month sliding period. All events are given a point value, and if the operator exceeds their violation rate threshold, intervention and sanctions will be applied in the progressive action. For example, an operator that exceeds 35% of their allowable threshold may be subject to a warning letter. The CVOR system calculates the operator's violation rates for collisions and convictions based on the total number of points accumulated over and up to a 24-month sliding period compared to the threshold values established for that operator's kilometric rate of travel during that same period. For inspections, the total points accumulated in any given period, up to a maximum of 24 months, are compared with the threshold points established based on the number of units, drivers, and vehicles inspected during that same period. These individual thresholds are combined to arrive at an overall violation rate with collisions and convictions weighted double to inspections. As new events and points are recorded, those older than 24 months drop off. The formula is based on a 24-month period or the number of months since the start of the operator's CVOR record, whichever is less. The violation rate is converted to a percentage of the operator's threshold. Appropriate ministry interventions and sanctions are triggered by the CVOR system if an operator reaches various levels of its threshold. Note: for details of the threshold value tables, threshold formulas, and sample calculations of kilometric rate of travel, violation rates, and percentages of threshold calculations of how you arrive at your violation rate, see Appendix A. The Deputy Registrar may authorize appropriate interventions and sanctions in cases not triggered by the automated system. Carrier Safety Rating. A Carrier Safety Rating, CSR, is a public label that is assigned to truck and bus operators. The Deputy Registrar of Motor Vehicles assigns a rating to an operator based on the company's safety record, which includes collisions, convictions, inspections, facility audits. CSRs are available to the public. They provide information about an operator's safety performance. Insurance companies, financial institutions, shippers, or users of an operator's services can find out the operator's CSR, which helps make informed decisions. Operators with good safety ratings can promote themselves to potential customers, whereas operators with poor safety ratings are easily identified. Ratings. An operator receives one of 5 possible safety ratings: excellent, satisfactory, satisfactory unaudited, conditional, unsatisfactory. Operators with an acceptable facility Audit may be eligible for an excellent or satisfactory safety rating. Audit rating should not be confused with the actual safety rating, as the audit is only a component of the overall outcome. Operators that have not been audited will be rated only on the basis of their CVOR violation rate. The highest rating an operator without an audit may receive is satisfactory unaudited. Excellent safety rating. A carrier would normally be eligible for an excellent safety rating if it meets all of the following conditions. The carrier has at least 24 months of demonstrated operation in Ontario and currently holds a valid CVOR. The carrier has an overall violation rate of 15% or less of overall threshold. The carrier also has a collision violation rate of 10% or less of the collision threshold, and the carrier has been audited and achieved an excellent score. Note, once an excellent rating is assigned, the operator must maintain both an overall violation rate no greater than 20% of overall CVOR threshold and a collision violation rate no greater than 15% of collision threshold. Failure to maintain these low violation rates will result in a safety rating downgrade. Satisfactory safety rating. A carrier would normally be eligible for a satisfactory safety rating if it meets all of the following conditions. The carrier has at least 6 months of demonstrated operation in Ontario and currently holds a valid CVOR. The carrier maintains an on-road performance level of 70% or less of its overall CVOR threshold, and the carrier has been audited and received a passing score. Satisfactory unaudited safety rating. A carrier that has not been audited would normally receive a satisfactory unaudited safety rating, provided it maintains an on-road performance level of 70% or less of its overall CVOR threshold. Conditional safety rating. A carrier may be considered for a conditional safety rating if any of the following circumstances occur. If the carrier's on-road performance level exceeds 70% of its overall CVOR threshold. If the carrier fails the facility audit. Upon the expiry of a suspension or plate seizure. If a person or company related to and affiliated with the carrier has an on-road performance level that exceeds 70% of its overall CVOR threshold or fails a facility audit. Note, to be upgraded from a conditional rating to a higher rating, i.e. satisfactory, unaudited, or satisfactory, the operator must maintain an on-road performance level of 60% or less of its overall CVOR threshold. All conditional ratings are in effect for a minimum of 6 months, except when a carrier rating is proposed for a rating downgrade from conditional to unsatisfactory. When such a rating downgrade is proposed, there are no minimum time requirements. During the 6-month conditional period, the carrier is expected to identify and improve the components of its safety performance, which resulted in the assignment of the conditional rating. Following the 6 months, the registrar may propose a rating based on the performance of the carrier at that time. A carrier may be assigned a conditional rating as the result of a failed audit. In this case, the carrier cannot improve its rating until 6 months after the date of the conditional rating assignment. The carrier must pass a second audit in order to receive a new rating. Carrier safety ratings and normal performance levels, on-road performance. Overall audit score 80 to 100%, excellent, 55 to 80% satisfactory, 0 to less than 55% conditional, and no audit satisfactory, unaudited, and then other categories there as well. Note, to be eligible for an excellent safety rating, the carrier's overall violation rate must not exceed 15% of its overall CVOR threshold, and its collision violation rate must not exceed 10% of its collision threshold. An excellent rating will be downgraded if the carrier's overall violation rate exceeds 20% of its overall CVOR threshold, or if its collision violation rate exceeds 15% of its collision threshold. Once assigned a conditional safety rating, to be eligible for an upgraded rating, a carrier's overall violation rate must be 60% or less of its overall CVOR threshold. A carrier is rated unsatisfactory for the duration of a plate seizure, suspension, or cancellation. Note, facility audits will not be considered an upgrade to satisfactory or excellent safety rating if the audit was completed more than 36 months ago. The overall audit score is expressed as excellent if the audit score is 80% and all profiles are 70% or greater. Pass if the overall audit score is 55% or greater and no profile is below 50%. Fail if the overall audit score is below 55% or any profile is below 50%. Carriers that exceed their overall CVOR threshold. When a carrier's overall violation rate exceeds its overall threshold level over 100%, the system brings it to the registrar's attention. In most cases, the carrier will be considered for sanction such as plate seizure, suspension, or cancellation. The carrier will also be considered for an unsatisfactory safety rating. The registrar may propose the carrier's rating be conditional until the sanction takes effect. The carrier will remain unsatisfactory for the duration of the sanction. Upon the completion of the sanction period, a conditional rating will automatically apply. No rating higher than conditional will be assigned following the sanction until at least 6 months has elapsed. The registrar may, however, during the conditional period following sanctions, propose an unsatisfactory rating where applicable, even though 6 months has not yet passed. Safety ratings for new operators. When an operator applies for a CVOR certificate, a satisfactory unaudited rating is usually proposed. The new operator is on-rated for the first 40 days of operation while the rating is proposed and until the rating comes into effect. Most operators will remain satisfactory unaudited for the first 6 months of operation. However, if an operator accumulates points on the CVOR record or fails an audit, the rating may drop to conditional or unsatisfactory. Disputing proposed carrier safety ratings. A carrier has the right to send to the registrar a written dispute of its proposed safety rating. The written dispute may include records as well as written submissions. The carrier must submit the written dispute to the registrar at the address indicated on the safety rating letter within 30 days of being notified of the proposed safety rating. After considering all submissions and records contained in the written dispute, the registrar will assign a safety rating. The assigned safety rating may be the one that was originally proposed or may be a different rating than the one proposed. There is no further appeal from this assignment of a rating. Deferred safety rating status. A carrier may wish to upgrade its safety rating to satisfactory or excellent by volunteering for and passing an audit. If a carrier does not pass the audit, the registrar will propose a conditional safety rating. Carriers that have volunteered for an audit and failed the audit but have an overall violation rate of 50% or less may apply for deferred safety rating status by disputing their proposed conditional rating. The registrar may defer the proposed conditional safety rating for up to 1 year if the carrier meets the following conditions. The carrier must submit a dispute and include a written undertaking to address the deficiencies found during the audit, and the carrier must agree to submit to a subsequent audit within 1 year of the notification of the proposed conditional rating. If the carrier meets these conditions, the registrar may defer assigning the conditional rating for up to 1 year. The conditional rating will be assigned immediately if any one or more of the following conditions occur. The carrier's overall violation rate exceeds 50% of its overall CVOR threshold. 6 months have passed and the carrier has not yet requested a re-audit. The carrier fails the re-audit, or 1 year has passed and the carrier has not been re-audited or is not awaiting a scheduled re-audit. A satisfactory or excellent rating, as applicable, will be assigned immediately if the carrier passes the audit or receives an excellent audit score. Collision points threshold. A collision points threshold value is determined for each operator based on its kilometric rate of travel per month in Canada, in Ontario for US plated operators, by all the commercial motor vehicles operating under the operator's CVOR certificate. All operators with the same rate of travel, therefore, will have the same collision points threshold. The collision violation rates of a large sample of operators were analyzed, and a threshold curve was established that identifies those operators with unacceptably high collision rates relative to the other operators at a similar rate of travel. The collision points threshold formula is: for the rate of travel, R is less than 120,000 kilometers per month, or for the rate of travel where is greater than 120,000 kilometers per month. Where TCOL equal collision points threshold, R equals rate of travel, kilometers per month, and N equals number of months in the analysis period, maximum of 24. For ease of calculation, collision points threshold values have been calculated and presented in a lookup table. See Appendix B for the table of threshold values. Otherwise, the above calculations will require a scientific calculator. Conviction points threshold. A conviction points threshold value is determined for each operator based on its kilometric rate of travel per month in Canada, in Ontario for US plated operators by all the commercial motor vehicles operating under the operator's CVOR certificate. All operators with the same rate of travel, therefore, will have the same conviction points threshold. The conviction violation rates of large sample of operators were analyzed and a threshold curve was established that identifies those operators with unacceptably high conviction rates relative to other operators of similar rate of travel. The conviction points threshold formula is: so very similar to the collision, this is just TCON instead of TCOL. By the rate of travel less than 120,000 kilometers a month, rate of travel more than 120,000 kilometers a month. For ease of calculation, conviction points threshold values have been calculated and presented in Appendix B. Inspection points threshold. An inspection points threshold value is determined for each operator based on its frequency of CVSA inspections. The number of units inspected is determined by adding the total number of vehicles inspected to the total number of drivers inspected. All operators with the same number of units inspected, therefore, will have the same inspection points threshold. The inspection violation rates of a large sample of operators were analyzed, and a threshold curve was established that identifies those operators with unacceptably high CVSA inspection out of service rates relative to other operators with a similar number of units inspected. The inspection points threshold is TINS, inspection points, U equals the number of units inspected in the analysis period. For the ease of calculation, inspection threshold values have been calculated and presented in Appendix B. Appendix A, CVOR formula. CVOR calculations How is an operator's monthly rate of travel calculated? An operator's monthly rate of travel in Canada during a specific time period is used to determine the collision and conviction points threshold. Operators must report a significant change in their rate of travel. Consequently, a determination of the operator's collision or conviction violation rate may contain multiple assessment time periods. The following procedure is followed to calculate monthly rate of travel. Operator calculates the total number of commercial motor vehicles operated in Ontario under the operator's CVOR certificate. Include power units plated in Ontario that are owned, leased, or rented by the operator, and any plated in Ontario that are operated under contract with owner operators. Include power units plated in the US or Mexico that operate in Ontario. Exclude power units operated by the operator that are plated in other Canadian jurisdictions. Exclude all trailers. For example, Bob owns 10 highway tractors, of which 8 are plated in Ontario and 2 are plated in Manitoba. He leases 5 trucks, all plated in Ontario. He also employs 5 owner operators, all with Ontario plates. The total number of commercial motor vehicles that Bob operates under his CVOR certificate is 8 plus 5 plus 5 equals 18 commercial motor vehicles. Calculate the total kilometers traveled per month by the fleet in Canada by specific time periods that reflect different rates of travel in Canada. Total kilometers traveled in a specific time period in Canada by the operator's fleet divided by the number of months in the time period equaled the monthly rate of travel in Canada. Kilometers divided by month. For example, period 1, 2010 0701 to 2010 1231, 6 months. Total kilometers traveled in Ontario by the fleet of 18 vehicles, 516,000. Total kilometers traveled in the rest of Canada by the fleet of 18 vehicles equals 324,000. Total kilometers traveled outside Canada by the fleet of 18 vehicles equals 216,000. Monthly rate of travel in Canada, 516,000 plus 324,000 divided by 6 equals 140,000 kilometers per month. Period 2, 2010 0101 to 2011 0630, 18 months. Total kilometers traveled in Ontario by the fleet of 18 vehicles, 1,296,000 kilometers. Total kilometers traveled in the rest of Canada by the fleet of 18 vehicles, 324,000 kilometers. Total kilometers traveled outside of Canada for the fleet of 18 vehicles equals 1,944,000 kilometers. Monthly rate of travel in Canada, 1,296,000 plus 324,000 divided by 18 equals 90,000 kilometers per month. How are the collision violation rate and percentage of threshold calculated? Using the data collected from police accident reports, collision demerit points are assigned according to the collision weighting table. A collision is considered to have impropriety if the accident report indicates something other than normal under vehicle condition, fields 31 and 32, driver action, fields 33 and 34, or driver condition, fields 35 and 36. For example, an operator with a rate of travel of 144,000 kilometers per month in period 1, 6 months, and 90,000 kilometers per month in period 2, 18 months, had the following 4 collisions in the past 24-month period. This period does not include the most recent 30 days. One involving property damage and no impropriety period, 1, 0 points. One involving personal injury and impropriety in period 1, 4 points. One involving a fatality and no impropriety in period 2, 0 points. One involving property damage and impropriety in period 2, 2 points. The collision violation rate would be calculated in the following manner. Step 1. Calculate the total collision points in each period. Period 1, 0 plus 4 equals 4. Total collision points in period 1. Period 2, 0 plus 2 equals 2. Total collision points in period 2. Step 2, determine the collision threshold points for each rate of travel for a 24-month period. Consult the table of threshold values, see Appendix B, to determine the threshold points for a 24-month period for an operator with a travel rate of 140,000 kilometers per month and 90,000 kilometers per month. Rate 1, at 140,000 kilometers per month, the collision threshold point value is 20.16 for a 24-month period. Rate 2, at 90,000 kilometers per month, the collision threshold point value is 16.2 for a 24-month period. Step 3, prorate the points for a 24-month period by the number of months in each period to determine the threshold value for that period. Collision threshold points in period 1, 20.6 multiplied by, in parentheses, 6 divided by 24, end parentheses, equals 5.04 points. Collision threshold points in period 2 equals 16.2 times, in parentheses, 18 divided by 24, end parentheses, equals 12.15 points. Step 4. To calculate the percentage of threshold for each period, divide the points assigned in the period by the collision threshold points times 100%. Period 1, percentage of threshold equals 100% times, in parentheses, 4 divided by 5.04 equals 79.37%. Period 2, percentage of threshold equals 100% multiplied by, in parentheses, 2 divided by 12.15, end parentheses, equals 16.46%. Step 5. To calculate the overall collision rate for the 24-month period, prorate it in proportion to the time in each period. Overall collision rate, 24-month period, equals 79.37% times 6, in parentheses, plus, in parentheses, 16.46% times 18, end parentheses, divided by 24. In parentheses, 476.22% plus 296.28%, end parentheses, divided by 24 equals 32.19%. How are conviction violation rate and percentage of threshold calculated? The CVOR system assigns points to safety related convictions as indicated in the conviction code table. To have a copy of the conviction code table sent to you, contact Carrier Sanctions and Investigation Office. For example, the same operator described previously with monthly travel rates of 140,000 kilometers per month in period 1 and 90,000 kilometers per month in period 2 also had the following 4 convictions in the past 24-month period. This does not include the most recent 30 days. Failure to make daily log in period 1, 3 points. Overweight, dual axle over 2,000 kilograms in period 2, 3 points. Drive motor vehicle, failure to display plates in period 2, 0 points. Fail to inspect, repair, maintain according to standard in period 2, 2 points. The conviction violation rate would be calculated in the following manner. Calculate the total conviction points in each period. Period 1, 3, total conviction points in period 1. Period 2, 3 plus 0 plus 2 equals 5, total conviction points in period 2. Step 2, determine the allowable conviction threshold points for each rate of travel for a 24-month period. Consult the table of threshold values, see Appendix B, to determine the threshold points for a 24-month period for an operator with a travel rate of 140,000 kilometers per month and 90,000 kilometers per month. Rate 1, at 140,000 kilometers per month, the allowable conviction threshold point value is 46.34 for a 24-month period. Rate 2, at 90,000 kilometers per month, the allowable conviction threshold points is 37.07 for a 24-month period. Step 3, prorate the allowable points for a 24-month period by the number of months in each period. Allowable points in period 1, 46.34 times in parentheses 6 divided by 24 end parentheses equals 11.59 points. Allowable points in period 2, 37.07 times in parentheses 18 divided by 24 end parentheses equals 27.8 points. To calculate the percentage of threshold for each period, divide the points assigned in the period by the allowable points. Again, 100% in parentheses 3 divided by 11.59 equals 25.88%. 100% times in parentheses 5 divided by 27.8 and parentheses equals 17.99%. Step 5, to calculate the overall conviction violation rate for the 24-month period prorated in proportion to the time in each period. Overall conviction violation rate, 24-month period, in parentheses, 25.88% times 6 plus end parentheses plus in parentheses 17.99% times 18 end parentheses divided by 24, which you arrive at a total of 19.96%. And then I'm sure it's a very similar formula. How are the number of units inspected for CVSA inspection calculated? And we will get to scroll through the Appendix B as well. Seeing all the rates of travel and different collision threshold points. Note, an operator's rate of travel may not match an exact value in the tables. To interpolate a value, you may use the following formula. Conviction threshold points. Conviction threshold points. Rate of travel, conviction threshold points. Units inspected, inspection threshold points. Units inspected, inspection threshold points.